Hands up, who knows AB InBev? We all, oh, okay. Okay, for those...
You should ask who knows our brands.
Yes, well, that's true.
Budweiser, anybody? Anybody in the mood for a Quilmes? Argentina?
Quilmes.
Skol?
Brahma. Yes, to introduce Maarten. Maarten has been at AB InBev for what,
3 years.
3 years. And before that, Maarten was running the global media and connection practice at Coca-Cola. You were there for ages, weren't you? A long time.
10.5 years.
So lured away from being one of the leaders at Coke's marketing to really unite the two sides of the AB InBev business, which merged a few years ago, which was Anheuser-Busch merging with InBev, the two mighty global brands of Stella Artois and Budweiser coming together to create the world's largest brewer?
Yep.
AB InBev just recently posted its six-month report. So in the last 6 months to June this year, AB InBev turned over $19 billion, made a gross profit of $11 billion. So an incredible and powerful global business. And I think Latin America accounts for about, what, 1/3 of your volume?
Yeah, it's very, very big.
So
Brazil is our second largest market after the US.
Okay.
But China's coming up fast.
So you have Harbin in China, you have Skol and Brahma beer in Brazil. I mean, these guys are everywhere. So it's fantastic to have you with us, Maarten. Maarten controls an advertising and media budget that is not disclosed, but it probably amounts to well over $2 billion a year. So what he says has some resonance to everybody in this room. So I've got a first question for you. I'm going to have a few questions for Maarten, and then we would really like you, the audience, to tweet your thoughts, and also there's some handheld microphones which will be passed around the room for you to ask questions of Maarten. Maarten, first question for you is just generally about the economic climate and about your category. Although your revenues were up in the first 6 months of the year by 5 or 6%, your volumes were only up by about 0.8%, which are what I would imagine signals some slightly tough trading, perhaps. Explain to us, some of the issues and global sort of pressures on you in the global beer category.
Sure. By the way, first of all, really glad to be here. I've been to many festivals of media, not to the LatAm one, so it was my first time here. I apologize for not speaking any Spanish, despite my Spanish last name. I don't really speak a word of Spanish, so I do apologize for that. I think we're very happy with our results, but they are obviously driven by a number of different factors that are, some of them are outside of our control. Things like the economies of Europe and North America are obviously under pressure. As a result of that, we also see pressure on things like exchange rates and so on and so forth. Those things are obviously happening, and we sort of arm ourselves as best as we can against that. I think the big challenge, though, from a marketing point of view, is that we're in the beer business, but we are really in the beverage business. And I think the beer industry has always looked at the beer industry in the past, and we are beginning to educate ourselves to understand that we're in the beverage industry. And so we are now much more aware and probably also much more reacting to, if you like, things like, what's happening in the wine category, what's happening in the spirits category. I think beers have entertained us for years, right? We've always had entertaining content in the past, very entertaining commercials, whether it was here in the US in the Super Bowl or anywhere else. I think it's been very entertaining, but in that, to a degree, we may have dumbed ourselves down a little bit too much when you compare it to the sophistication of some of the liquors and spirits advertising and wine advertising. But also, there's obviously been a proliferation of drinking occasions, right? Beer used to be for certain occasions, and these other brands and categories have obviously encroached into that. And I think we now have a task to sort of bring that back. And some of our target audience, when they reach legal drinking age, they go straight into other categories and never even touch a beer. And that's obviously something that we're trying to address.
So there's actually consumers out of time. This being a British man, the fact of not drinking beer is quite an anathema. But so there are actually people moving into legal drinking age who don't go and have a beer first. They go
Correct.
Straight to wine. So
they not even to wine. They go straight to very strong liquor. Especially in nightlife, that is right. So we understand that better, and we're trying to sort of be relevant for that target audience, and where liquor used to be your dad's drink and beer was your drink, it's sort of almost, for certain people, it has reversed a little bit, and so we're trying to address it. One of the things that we've done very successfully in the US is launched a new variant of Bud Light called Bud Light Platinum. And that, you know, the way it's packaged, the way it's distributed, the formulation of the drink itself, which is it's a beer with higher alcohol, but still very easy to drink so that it doesn't bloat and fill you up. The same with Skol in Brazil, with Skol 360. We're trying to find the brands that are sort of address some of these issues that people mention when they don't drink beer.
But I guess the marketing challenge is to keep the premium in your new variants, but to try and also defend the price premium of your existing brand. So it's tough.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk a little bit about media. We're at the Festival of Media and the way that you are looking at the media landscape and how you're spending your money. Now, first of all, I just want to sort of dispel something here in the festival, because we always have global clients on stage and they tend to sort of criticize television. It's easy to knock the biggest medium. Still in this market, you know, well over 50–60% of advertising expenditure goes on open TV and cable TV. And it's very fashionable for big clients to say, we don't like TV anymore, it's expensive and the audience doesn't deliver the audience. Yeah. But you still spend on TV, and it's still a very important medium in your portfolio. So should we dispel this issue of TV? I mean, what are your attitudes towards the medium?
Well, no. For me, it's not about moving everything from on-air to online or moving everything from analog to digital. To me, the starting point always should be, where's the consumer? Where can I find the consumer, and where can I engage with the consumer in a relevant way? And if television is a part of that, that's absolutely fine. But the way I will judge a plan is by looking at, did you really understand the consumer and what their interest is and where they spend their time and where they are emotionally engaged and all that kind of stuff. And so if television is part of that, that's absolutely fine. But if the plan shows 0% television because we've understood it in that way and we're approaching it in that way, then that's fine too. So I'm not here to kill television. Now, television does have its problems, and in Latin America as well. I mean, if I look at Argentina and also Brazil in the next couple of years, which are two very, very important markets for us, I see very high inflation in television. And inflation is a problem, but at the same time also, I would say, you know, consumer engagement and especially among young males, which is our core target in most markets, that's a problem, right? So because yes, they're interested in sports, but they may not necessarily watch it on a traditional television anymore. And so if TV manages to increase its prices every year, but decreases its audience and its relevance, especially of that audience, then I'm going to go look for alternatives, right? So that's what my counterparts in procurement tell me. Is, you know, if a raw ingredient prices itself out of the market, you're going to look for alternatives. And if you consider television a critical part of, or critical raw ingredient of your marketing mix, but it's getting more and more expensive and less relevant, you're going to go and find alternatives for that raw ingredient, and that's what we're doing.
Just as a side note, is procurement still as important in your organization as it was, say, 5 years ago?
No, it's more important. Right. But I think it's also more educated. We have more, I would say, we have people in procurement now that understand media, that understand marketing, and so they have a media and marketing background, and then they absolutely add value. If they wouldn't do that, right, it's really difficult to transfer from buying hops or aluminum to buying media, right? That's never going to work. But if you have people that really understand the space, then it's absolutely fine. Okay.
One of the things, I'll come to some of your Twitter questions in a second, guys. There's some good things coming through. But you're quite famous. I mean, some of your brands are quite famous for being very social brands. I
Yes.
think, you know, as of today, Budweiser globally has 9.6 million fans.
Globally, yeah.
Globally, which makes it the most liked beer, I suppose.
Yes.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
It is important because the way we look at social media is it's a reach opportunity, right? For me, social media is a reach medium. And it's quite a special reach medium because it allows me to not only reach a lot of people technically with a push of the button, but it is a reach medium that then also actually allows engagement and conversation. And so I get actually some answers back, yeah. Which is quite interesting, or opinions back. But for me, it's a reach medium. And ultimately, it is one of the media that could help me offset some of those increases in television, and actually in an environment that is also more liked and more relevant for my young male target audience. Yeah. So
what's your strategy for social media then in driving these fans and these likes and so on? And specifically to Latin America, you know, how does your strategy, how's your planning, you know, what happens here in this region?
It's no secret, and I've said this publicly before, that 3 years ago, AB InBev, in terms of digital and social media and all that kind of stuff, was in the dark ages. We had literally nothing. And one of the challenges, of course, was to get that started. 3 years ago, when I joined the company, I did an assessment of where we were with our spend, and I found that we were spending less than 0.1% on average across all markets in search. And so 0.1% was the average, which meant that some markets were spending less than 0.1% in search, right? So literally nothing, and that's just one example. So we needed to educate ourselves. So the first thing that we did is we built a sort of a global approach, if you like, to social media. What is the role? How do we approach it? How do we think about it? And all of that based on lots of conversations and learnings with our agencies, with Facebook, by looking at others, and so on and so forth. And then we started working with the markets to implement that, because, you know, we can't do that at a global headquarters. That really needs to happen at the market level. And in Latin America, one of the first ones really out of the gate was Argentina, who I always said, you know, within a year they went from digital zeros to digital heroes. And did that very, very effectively. And at the end of that year, Quilmes, which is our biggest brand in Argentina, had about 1 million fans. And you know that there's a bit of rivalry between Brazil and Argentina. I'm not really sure what that has to do with anything other than football, but there's a little bit of a rivalry there, right? And so our Argentinian friends in the marketing department saw that they were growing very fast, and Brazil saw that, and they didn't like that, of course. So they got their act together and really structured themselves based on the learnings from Argentina initially, but then sort of went and took that to the next level. And right now, I'd say globally, within our global network, and I deal mostly with our top 10 markets, I would say that Brazil are the social media world champions. Charlie just used the number of our global fan base for Budweiser, which is 9.6 million fans as of today, which makes it the biggest social beer brand. But Skol, which is a local brand in Brazil, has, I think, about 7 million. You wrote down the number this morning. I can't remember exactly what it was.
7,210,000.
So, and that's just in Brazil. And I don't understand, because Brazil, beautiful weather, great nature, beautiful beaches. Why the hell are people so engaged in social media, right? But apparently, it really resonates there, and so it really works very, very well, and they doing a fantastic job and work very hard on it.
What strategy do you employ then? So that's a lot of fans, but what strategy do you have to engage with them? Is there a sort of global policy on social media?
Well, yes, there is, and well, I wouldn't call it a policy. It's more like a framework, or a framework is probably the best way to describe it. And it's just really based on the learnings that we've had first from outside partners like agencies and so on and so forth, but also we have a global partnership with Facebook that gives us a lot of insights. And so what we learned was for simple things, right? A lot of brands were very afraid to post, and so they post 3 times a week. And then they think, well, if we do more, then we're going to upset our consumers. And actually what we learned was that 8 times a day is actually not all that much. And so we went from 3 times a week in a lot of these markets to 8 times a day. Because what we learned was, and again, this is where my analogy to television works, is that, you know, different watch in different day parts. Some people watch in the morning, some people watch in the evening, some people watch when they commute to work and going home, other people do it at their lunch break, and other people do it when they get home in the evening when they have access to a computer at home. So 8 times a day was a big thing on average. Secondly, we learned that you know, variation in content is important. Don't make everything about a big promotion, right? You know, participate, you know, give us your details, all that. No, you can do very light and airy and fluffy things, and people will still like it. You know, and so in order to have content 8 times a day for most of our brands, you need to come up with a lot of stuff. But simple picture of a barbecue with a nice cool bottle of beer generates 30,000 likes. And now we do those, and you can pre-produce a lot of that stuff. And then we invite people to send their own pictures, and we celebrate some of those pictures with, you know, fan picture, and we identify them as a fan picture, so people have their 15 pixels of fame, and so on and so forth.
And the question I think that everyone wants to sort of hear answered here is that, so what that you've got, you know, 50 million people around the world who are engaged with your brands in social media. It's great. I imagine from a marketing point of view, it's nice and feeling that you've got these people liking what you do and your content. But does that really translate into sales? So
I cannot measure that directly, but I have enough indirect data points that tells me it's important. So the first thing that we did this year is to do a fan segmentation study, because we wanted to understand if people like you, what kind of likers are there? Are they, you know, casual likers? Are they highly engaged likers? And is there a difference between people that like you? So we did a fan segmentation study here in the US as a pilot. We're going to continue with that next year. And what we learned was that people that like you actually like you for a reason, because they tend to be, especially the people that are sort of, let's say, the super fans, so the people that have a really high engagement with you. They drink more, they have higher brand equity measures, and therefore they matter more. And they also they share more on your behalf because they are truly part of the fabric of that brand. And so in that respect, it matters. The other data point that I have, and this is a general data point, not specifically related to social media, but in general, we know that people with a higher, let's say, brand KPI, love brand kind of measurement, or whatever you want to call it, people that have that very highly, they are easier to communicate with, and then ultimately easier to sell to in terms of selling premium brands. And that's the business we're in, right? We're ultimately in the business of selling premium brands, not, you know, unbranded store brands, but premium brands that command a slightly higher price. And you get that price, and people are prepared to pay that price if they have a high love for your brand. So that's that.
Thank you. If does anyone would like to ask a question in person? There's some great.
There were some questions there, but they go so fast that I have lost track of them.
Lady here, and then I'll probably ask a question coming up on Twitter. Thank you.
Hi.
Could you say your name and where you're from, please?
Yes, of course. Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm from a nonprofit organization called Techo. So my question has to be, how does corporate social responsibility play into this huge advertising budget and into your marketing strategy?
Great question, and actually very important and very topical. And I'll explain the topical in a second. As a company, we have a corporate goal, and our corporate goal is to be the best beer company, not surprising, in a better world. And that's part of our corporate fabric as a company. And the better world part may sound to some people a little bit like, yeah, you're just saying that. But actually, if you think about it, that is really, really important. And the better world part for us is important because if we don't have access to clean water and enough water, we don't have a business. If we don't have access to skilled and educated workers, then we don't have a business. And so on and so forth. So we care about community, and we care about water, and we care ultimately, because we're an alcoholic beverage, also about making sure that people drink responsibly and don't drink and drive. And so those are the 3 pillars of our Better World component. I said topical because we literally just last week celebrated our Be Responsible Day globally, which is a day where literally all of our, I think we have about 125,000 people working for us, literally spent a day going out in the trade. I did this myself in Connecticut, where I live, with our sales team, and we take out pamphlets, door stickers, ID guides, and so on and so forth for the retailers to use in the trade to make sure that people that buy alcoholic beverages are over 18 years or over 21, depending on the market you're in, and that they don't drink and drive, and all that kind of stuff. So we do that literally, and we take that very seriously because, again, if we don't have access to all of that, then we don't have a business. So it's part of our fabric of our company.
You've had a policy in the past where you put some onus back on your media buying agencies and the media vendors, and for every ad that you acquire, or every number of ads you acquire, you ask the media vendor to run for free a non-drink and drive ad that you created.
It's not one-on-one. That would be wonderful.
That would be. So explain to us how that specifically works and whether that is something that you roll out globally.
But it is. It's actually part of our contracts that we do with our media agencies is now that if you want to work with an alcoholic beverage company, you got to take an interest in that industry, and you got to put some stake in the ground. And so again, if we're not allowed to advertise, then we lose, obviously, a part of our business, but so do the agencies. And so agencies are mandated to participate in this, not just with let's say, industry activities or whatever, but literally creating ads, and in the case of media agencies, placing ads and actually part funding that.
And do you see that working? So
yes.
It's a good. So do you have that in every market now?
We do that in every market now. It's a part of our global agency contracts, and we also obviously track. Now we're not the only ones, but as the biggest in the world, we track things like so what's happening with drink driving, what's happening with water access and water rejuvenation. Other stuff that we do, we're in a lot of markets, we're replacing our trucks with bio-friendly diesel trucks. We just put on one of our breweries in the US, we literally covered pretty much the whole roof in sun panels. And so we do a lot of work in that space because, again, it's part of doing business.
Part of Stella Artois' promotions recently in Europe has been predicated on recycled packaging, carbon neutral bottles. Do consumers really care?
In a lot of markets they do, the majority in some markets not, but we care because, again, we don't have a business if we don't, right? Yeah. We will literally kill our own business. Okay. And so it doesn't make sense to not do it.
Okay, we got time for just one more question.
There was tons of questions on Twitter. I will go back to Twitter and answer some of those as well if we don't get to them.
Do we have someone willing to ask one more question from the floor?
Or read one from the Twitter
feed?
Right,
so from Twitter, I rather like the interesting one about this, it's related to responsibility, it's this anti-alcohol movement, greater degree of pressure on alcohol brands to curb advertising. How are you countering that? Do you see in Latin America any threats to your freedom to advertise?
I don't like to talk about threats. I think the issue is, and by the way, it's an issue that is not just AB InBev, right? As the leader in the world, obviously, you're always a little bit more exposed. But I think it's really an issue of if these products contribute to the economy, if these products are freely traded and available and sold and whatever else, then surely they should also be freely marketed. We take our responsibilities very seriously, and so if there is reason to criticize that, then absolutely. But if you're taking it seriously, then the sort of sledgehammer approaches sometimes seem to be more motivated by other things than really sort of that they actually work. And we have seen evidence that the self-regulation that we impose as an industry works far better than anything else that's been tried so far.
Okay. Okay, well, I'd love to have more time talking to you, but we need to move on to get our timings back on. I'd also like to thank you, as many of you have sent some of your staff to the Festival of Media Academy, which is running lots of very worried people running around trying to work on their presentations right now. It's an AB InBev marketing challenge, which Maarten wrote, which is about repositioning the Beck's brand here in Latin America. So we're looking forward to seeing how the group's going on after this.
And I will go back to Twitter later on. If there are any questions that we haven't addressed, I will answer them. I may not be able to answer them in 140 characters, but I'll do my best.
Do your best. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Maarten Albarda from InBev.
Thank you.